What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday we had some pretty big announcements from Sony. One was official, the other one may have been accidental, but this has to do with new studio acquisitions, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a string of events and maintenance and updates for the Switch with their current online platform that has everyone speculating right now as to what Nintendo is getting ready for. We'll go over that. And we're also going to be talking about a pitch that was revealed for F-Zero to Nintendo. It was denied, and it had an interesting twist to it. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Xbox Live Games with Gold. This is for the month of July. And of course, if you have Xbox Live, every month, Microsoft will look under the couch and find some games to throw to you. This one, though, actually has a standout. So there is something worth downloading here. Let's take a look. This is the video they put out. And we can see from left to right, Planet Alpha, that is July 1st to July 31st. Then we have Rock of Ages 3, Make and Break. That's July 16th to August 15th. Conquer Live and Reloaded, July 1st to July 15th. And then Midway Arcade Origins. Out of these four, I would recommend downloading Conquer Live and Reloaded. It was a very fun game on the original Xbox, and I actually think it still holds up pretty well now, especially if you have never played a Conquer game. Certainly one to go back and check out. Now, I don't know if Conquer would work like a new one in today's day and age, so this might be your only real shot at playing through it. Now, again, we have talked about Xbox Live Games with Gold not being great. The only, like I said, standout here is an original Xbox game, so it kind of shows where we are with this service, but Game Pass is Microsoft's primary focus. It's just this does not at all line up very well with what Sony's doing with PlayStation Plus. Also, it was brought up that Amazon has a couple of sales currently on games that just came out, and I figured I would bring it up here to you guys very quickly if you were looking for discounts on things like Mario Golf or even Scarlett Nexus. Take a look at these pages here. We do have Scarlett Nexus on the PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, and Xbox One at 17% off. I also noticed that Monster Hunter Rise is 17% off, which is, pretty good overall. And then we have Mario Golf Super Rush at 15% off, so just over $50 on that one. I know people are going to look for a bigger price drop for Mario Golf, probably down to like $40 maybe, and that will most likely happen down the road, maybe towards the end of this year on like Black Friday or something like that. This appears to just be a sale that Amazon themselves are holding, so I mean, if you were looking to save some money on something like even Scarlett Nexus, certainly worth a look here on Amazon. Oh, and while we know that Starfield is coming out at the end of next year, a lot of people have been wondering what's going on with the next Elder Scrolls game, as they announced it a little while ago, and it does seem like it's going to be quite a while before we see this game, and we can see this here. This was Todd Howard talking with The Telegraph, and we do have VGC following up here. The new Starfield technology creation engine 2 is sort of built for both games. He said, it's like a new tech base. The vast majority of our development work is on Starfield right now, but everybody works on everything, so the projects kind of intertwine. Going on further to say, it's good to think of Elder Scrolls 6 as still being in a design phase, but we're checking the tech. Is this going to handle the things we want to do in that game? Every game will have some new suite of technology, so Elder Scrolls 6 will have some additions onto the Creation Engine 2, and that game is going to require. Now, we know Pete Hines said, hey, we're trying to get Starfield done, and it's probably a good idea for Bethesda, especially working with this Creation Engine 2, just to make sure everything is smooth when it comes out. We know these Bethesda games come with a certain level of jankiness to them, so I'm thinking Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a game we see maybe towards the end of this generation that is just now starting up. It's going to be a bit. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a couple of acquisitions. At least we think a couple of acquisitions for Sony. One was a strange thing that happened and we'll get to, but let's talk about the official studio acquisition. That is Housemarque. We can head over here to PlayStation Blog. This was written up by Herman Holst, who's the head of PlayStation Studios, saying, today I'm thrilled to welcome a new member to the PlayStation Studios family. I've been a fan of Housemarque since the studio's early days when they introduced Super Stardust HD to PlayStation fans. Housemarque's recent release of Returnal proves the studio is one with incredible vision, capable of creating memorable new games that resonate with our community. This edition enhances the creative force of PlayStation Studios, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for Housemarque. Now, this was from the co-founder and managing director at Housemarque, saying, "We are so excited to finally join the PlayStation Studios family. This gives our studio a clear future and a stable opportunity to continue delivering on gameplay-centric approaches while still experimenting with new methods of narrative delivery and pushing the boundary of this modern art form." Locally here in Helsinki, this also means that we will officially expand the PlayStation family to a growing industry hub and secure the legacy of the oldest game studio in Finland. So this is really cool to see for Housemarque. They've been around for a long time. I mean, we're talking, I think, 1995, and they've worked on a lot of different games, and they have worked on other platforms outside of Sony. It's just, over the last decade plus, they've certainly really been lined up more so with Sony, but they worked on the Xbox 360 with something like Golf Tee It Up or Trans World Snowboarding on the original Xbox, and I think they even worked on a game for the Gizmondo. So they've been around the block a couple of times here, but to be brought in the PlayStation Studios, I mean, that's gotta be a serious weight lifted off their shoulders there, because now they can kind of pursue what's next after Returnal without probably having to work out a contract or deal necessarily with Sony. Okay, these are the boundaries you're constrained within for the budget and the contract here. That'll still exist, obviously, but I feel like there will be a bit more freedom now within PlayStation Studios. It just kind of feels like they set out to prove themselves with Returnal. Remember, going from Resogun to Returnal, pretty big jump there, but it must have worked. I will say Returnal, even if you're not a fan of the roguelike type games, it was certainly creative and stood out from what Sony generally put out, or at least people will look at and say it's that over-the-shoulder, narrative-driven story game. Returnal certainly felt a bit different than what we've been playing with Sony, at least recently. So I'm happy for Housemarque, and I really am looking forward to what creative new idea for a game they come up with after Returnal here, and I'm thinking they're not going to do a sequel or anything like that to Returnal. I'm wondering if now they're like, hey, let's go off and make a new IP with being part of the PlayStation Studios family. We know they'll talk to each other. They'll even provide help with different things they're running into. So exciting stuff there to see what we get from Housemarque. I'm assuming in 3 or 4 years for a new project, but there was another acquisition that appeared to be accidentally tweeted out. At least we think so. It was either an early announcement or somebody just messed up in Photoshop. Take a look at this image here. This shows Bluepoint Games. Welcome to the family with the PlayStation Studios logo. This was tweeted out by PlayStation Japan. I'm not really sure how you messed that up, because, I mean, you would have had to have exported that out of some sort of image editing software like a Photoshop, for example, taken a look at it, then posted it up on Twitter, run it through some sort of PR agency there, just make sure everything's good, and then put it out. Now, they pulled it back down, but would anyone really be that surprised if Bluepoint became part of PlayStation Studios? Not really. They have worked on, once again, games outside of just PlayStation. I believe they helped port the original, or Titanfall 1 to the Xbox 360, and I think they even worked on Metal Gear Solid HD Collection for the Xbox 360, but obviously they've really just been working on PlayStation remasters or remakes with Demon's Souls. So I think it makes a ton of sense, and I've been saying this for a while, that Sony should lock up Bluepoint Games, especially if they have some ideas going forward, maybe around a new original IP. But if Sony is looking to make that announcement, it'll probably be days later, maybe even weeks. At this point, I would say give the spotlight to Housemarque. They have that security now being brought into PlayStation Studios, and we'll look forward to what they have for us with their next game. Next up, let's talk about a string of maintenance and updates that Nintendo has been doing, and it's something I even brought up. I'm like, wow, they're doing a lot of these little updates, and it's odd because we even had that full jump in number, but nothing really changed, and we really haven't had a lot of features added at all to the Switch in quite a while, and I've been wondering if that means we're gonna get some sort of system overhaul or some sizable update here coming up. But then it looks like there was a ton of maintenance pretty recently as well, and as we're seeing all of this add up, people are wondering if Nintendo is getting ready for something big. I've seen the idea of all kinds of new system features, and yes, even the Switch Pro brought up. Let's take a look here. Oatmeal Dome actually had a lot of the maintenance stuff set up here. In semi-related news, a large amount of Nintendo servers about to be taken down for maintenance. Right now, they have friend notifications they're working on, 7 p.m. Pacific save data backup, and that includes Animal Crossing New Horizons. And then at 9:30 p.m., there's the eShop, game, update data, and firmware downloads, and parental controls. I mean, pretty much everything. Like, a lot of stuff is being worked on through maintenance by Nintendo, and they will do this, but usually they'll kind of like split up parts of it, not do it all at once here. However, as I know, people are speculating and wondering about some sort of revision for the Switch. And look, I'm sure Nintendo will do one here at some point because their history says they will, especially with their handheld lineup with like the 3DS and the 3DS XL and so on. I'm looking at this as probably being a result of their most recent firmware being broken several times over, and they're still working to repair it. Now, I haven't seen a lot of people say online that they are still having those issues, but we don't really know what had to take place in the background for Nintendo with their firmware on their side to fix that. So maybe this was just for cleanup after them like ripping all the cords out and putting them back in, for lack of a better term there, but that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. I would like to think that we are building up to some sort of big feature that would be added, and I'm not even kidding when I say at this point a big feature would be able to message your friends or just change the background on your Switch. The bar is low, all right, for this right now, so we'll see if we get anything from Nintendo as we go into the fall and the holiday season. Just anything here, even folders would be really cool. Next up, let's talk about Remedy and Control. Now, Control, of course, has been tied into like Alan Wake now through the latest expansion, but it does look like Control sold well enough, and Remedy is pretty much all in on this franchise, so much so that they have announced not only a new game in the Control series, but also a multiplayer spin-off. Take a look at this over at The Verge. Developer Remedy Entertainment announced that it's making a new game codenamed Condor, a multiplayer spin-off of Control. At this time, they don't have any details around release date, price, nothing there. This is still pretty early on, but they do say it will be a 4-player cooperative PvE, that's player versus environment game. It'll be built with Northlight, the same engine used for Control, and it will release on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S consoles. And all of this was done through a deal with 505 Games, saying as a multiplayer game, Project Condor has the potential to engage the gaming community in the long run, contributing to 505 Games' product revenue stream longer than traditional games. They went on a bit further to talk about how they are collaborating with 505 Games for a bigger budget Control title, and I mean, I assume that is a sequel or maybe just one based in the same universe. There's also been talks about Alan Wake, with an Alan Wake remaster kind of leaking out there thanks to the Epic Games Store. So there's a lot of stuff happening here with Remedy. Certainly exciting stuff if you're a fan of Control and you like the idea of a spin-off multiplayer game, which that could be fun, or the idea of Alan Wake seeing a resurgence here over the next couple of years. So keep an eye on Remedy because I think they have a lot of stuff coming up here. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a pitch that was made to Nintendo for F-Zero. This was from Giles Goddard, who had talked with GameXplain, kind of going over the entire backstory. In the end, it was turned down by Nintendo, but take a look at this here. This says at Vitae, we were trying to think of stuff to do, and I thought it would be really cool to have an ultra-realistic F-Zero, still with sort of really cool futuristic graphics, but just really realistic physics. We thought that'd be a really interesting thing to try out. So we made a demo for the Switch and PC. It was also more to show the capability of our engine. We had a multi-platform engine that was running on 3DS, Switch, and PC, whatever. So we just made a demo of some really cool F-Zero cars going around this crazy track. Just hundreds of cars using AI to race each other, but they'd all have realistic physics, like really ultra, a bit over, too over the top realistic. So the hovering was actually caused by 4 jets in the bottom, sort of adjusting themselves way too over the top, but it meant that if you killed one of the jets, it would end up sinking, and if you killed the other one, it'd flip over and all this kind of stuff. And it was really fun. It was a sandbox type thing, just playing around and seeing what would happen if you caused a crash there and whatever. Yeah, Nintendo were very wary about using old IP because it's such a huge thing for them to do. It's much easier to go with a new idea, a new IP, than to reuse an old one. We were stuck in a catch-22 working with Nintendo because we'd say to them, we want to do this F-Zero game. Can you give us all this money? And they'd say, well, you don't have enough people. And I'd say, well, if we had the money, we could get the people, you know? So it was forever this ridiculous catch-22 with them, wanting us to make a game, us pitching a game, and then them saying, you don't have enough people. So I will admit, when I first read the headline for this, I was like, an ultra-realistic F-Zero game. I don't really know what that means. Do we have to like go to the DMV to like get a registration and then call the insurance company for the cars? No, the idea is that the over-the-top physics. So the jets on the bottom could be affected, and then the vehicle you're moving around with, or as they say, hovering around with, would in some way be affected with its performance to the point where it could flip over. That actually sounds kind of cool, and I'm sure Nintendo looked at this and said, I don't know how development will go here, because I think that idea could actually work, could be fun, but Nintendo is probably wondering, well, what's like the big idea? Like, where are we going with F-Zero? Because this has come up. They don't really want another racing game necessarily. They want F-Zero to become, I guess, something else with some brand new original idea. I don't know what that would be, but here's another story, I guess, of Nintendo having a pitch for F-Zero, them going back and forth, and it ultimately not happening. So I don't know what the future holds for F-Zero, if there ever is any, because this sounds like a cool idea, and Nintendo just kind of moved along from it. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a little poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, if Sony buys Bluepoint, would you like to see them do another remake or a brand new original game? This was pretty split. 46% said remake. There are still some older games I want to see remade. And then 54% said a new game. Let's see what Bluepoint can come up with. And that's kind of the issue now, because Bluepoint has shown that they are very good at remaking older games. We just saw Demon's Souls. That had to have been like a nightmare almost, because you have to make sure it feels the same so that Souls fans won't get on you about messing different parts up. They wanted that Demon's Souls experience brought to the PS5, and Bluepoint pulled it off. So now you look back and say, could they do Metal Gear Solid? Could they do Legend of Dragoon? There's a lot of suggestions being brought up, and if it's something like a Metal Gear Solid, I'll admit, because I would like to see it, I'd prefer them remake that rather than do a new game. But if it's something I'm not as interested in them remaking, yeah, I'd like to see what Bluepoint come up on their own. But all of this comes down to, for me anyway, if Sony is going to acquire them. Again, strange situation over there with PlayStation Japan tweeting out that image. I'm thinking that that acquisition is going to happen here in the coming weeks. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Cyber saying, how many more times will Sakurai have to say that the next fighter is the last until people finally understand there will be no Fighter Pass Volume 3? I legitimately think we're going to have to get to the end of that last Sakurai Presents, and then he probably does some closing statement, maybe a whole speech or something about Smash, and maybe he makes the announcement that this is it for him as well when it comes to developing Smash, and that's probably when reality will sink in there. I feel like a lot of people look at that and say, well, a Fighter Pass would just make a ton of money. Like, it would, and yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, we obviously see whenever these characters are announced, they explode online, it trends on Twitter, and I'm sure Nintendo cleans up. But at some point, they're gonna stop with these passes, and if Sakurai says this is it, then this is it. The question will be, what does Sakurai do next? Another Smash game or something completely different? And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas the Sony acquisition of Housemarque, seemingly after they proved themselves with Returnal. And then what about this Bluepoint acquisition? How likely do you think that one is? And then what about this whole situation with Nintendo? All these updates, all this maintenance, do you think it's leading to something? And then I've asked it before, I'm sure I'll ask again, how do we make F-Zero work in current times? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.